He seems normal, calm, charming, even helpful. You might meet him at work. You might date him. You might even trust him with your child. And by the time you realize who he is, it's too late. Not all monsters hide in the dark. Some of them live under perfect lighting. They smile. They look you in the eye. But their soul? Missing. And Carl Jung understood this long before modern psychology tried to label it. Because for Jung, there was no such thing as a bad person in the way society wanted to believe. There was only one truth, the human shadow. And if that shadow is denied, rejected, buried deep inside a person who is already born without empathy, you don't just get someone dangerous, you get someone inhuman. Now ask yourself this. What's the difference between someone who knows what they're doing is wrong and someone who never cared if it was right or wrong in the first place? That's the line between the sociopath and the psychopath. But Jung didn't just want us to understand the difference. He wanted us to recognize that we carry both shadows inside us. Let's go deeper. A sociopath isn't born. He's made, shaped by trauma, abuse, neglect, a world that taught him, no one will protect you, so destroy first. He lashes out, can't regulate emotions. He'll love you one moment and hurt you the next. Not because he wants to, but because he doesn't know how not to. The sociopath is a child left in the cold so long, he forgot what warmth even felt like. But the psychopath, he was never looking for warmth. He was calculating from the start. He studies people like puzzles, mirrors your emotions to make you trust him. And when you're finally vulnerable, he strikes, not in rage, not in desperation, but with precision. The sociopath is the explosion. The psychopath is the blade. Jung saw these behaviors not just as disorders, but as manifestations of the fractured self. And that's where this story turns dark. Because he believed the psychopath is not an accident. He is what happens when the shadow becomes the ego. When a person never learns to integrate their darker impulses, when they deny guilt, compassion, vulnerability, the shadow no longer whispers. It takes the throne. And when that happens, the person may still look human. But what drives them is something else. There's a story Jung once told his students. He said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." But what if the person has no soul to face? No guilt, no remorse, no real self behind the performance. That's the terror of the psychopathic shadow. It isn't just hidden, it's hollow. These people walk among us, in positions of power, in our social circles, sometimes even in our families. They don't need to scream or threaten. They wear the perfect mask, because for them, the mask is all there ever was. Carl Jung believed every human has a shadow. It holds your fears, rejections, shame, and suppressed desires. If you face it, if you integrate it, you grow stronger, more whole, more human. But if you deny it, if you bury it, it festers, it twists, and in some people, it takes over. That's what separates the wounded from the predator. The sociopath may act out destructively, but somewhere deep inside, his humanity flickers. He feels something. It might be distorted, but it's there. But the psychopath? There's nothing left to reach. He doesn't need to be pushed. He doesn't need revenge. He just watches, calculates, and smiles as the world burns. Now here's the most disturbing part. Jung warned us. If we pretend these people are just evil or sick, we miss the truth. Because the moment you dehumanize the psychopath, you let your own shadow slip away unseen. The danger isn't just them. It's what they awaken in you. The urge to fight fire with fire, to manipulate back, to mirror their coldness, to protect yourself by becoming just a little more like them. And that's how evil spreads, not through violence, but through emotional mimicry. You become what you needed to survive. And in that moment, the shadow wins. So the question isn't just, how do I recognize a psychopath or sociopath? But something far more terrifying. What happens if I become one? Because according to Jung, the scariest monsters aren't born or made. They're chosen. Every time we deny our shadow, every time we refuse to confront the darkness within. That's the real difference between the two. The sociopath lost his way. The psychopath never had one. And if we're not careful, we'll walk so far from our own light that we forget Carl Jung didn't believe in good people and bad people. He believed in whole people and fragmented people. And he knew that the deeper the fracture, the darker the shadow. So when we speak about psychopaths and sociopaths, we're not just diagnosing disorders. We're confronting what happens when the self breaks so deeply. It can no longer recognize itself. But here's the disturbing truth Jung saw coming. The line between the pathological and the spiritual is razor thin. What if the psychopath isn't just a medical condition, but a spiritual void? What if the sociopath isn't just emotionally unstable, but the embodiment of the rejected child inside us all? And what if both of them are mirrors of the shadow we refuse to face? Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's not just a quote. That's a curse. Because the unconscious mind isn't just where dreams are made. It's where your deepest fears hide. It's where trauma buries itself alive. It's where the shadow grows teeth. Now apply that to a child raised in violence, neglect, abandonment, a boy who learns that crying is weakness, that love is manipulation, that people are threats. What choice does his unconscious make? It hides the fear. It buries the love. It shatters the self. And in its place, it builds armor. That armor becomes the sociopath. He's not evil. He's defended. So defended, he no longer knows how to let anything in, even love. Now contrast that with a child who's born with a biological inability to feel empathy. A different brain structure, different wiring. This child doesn't need to build defenses because he doesn't register emotional pain the same way. He watches people cry, but doesn't flinch. He sees someone suffer and studies it like an insect. This is where Jung's idea of the psychic split becomes terrifying. He called it the dissociation of the personality, a moment when a person becomes divided from themselves, when their ego and shadow are no longer wrestling, because one has already won. And in the psychopath, The shadow isn't just active, it's in charge. But Jung didn't stop at diagnosis. He went deeper than any psychologist of his time. He asked, what is the purpose of these dark personalities in the collective unconscious? And the answer might disturb you. Jung believed the appearance of shadow-dominant figures, like the psychopath or sociopath, was necessary for the evolution of the psyche. Why? Because these individuals reveal the hidden sickness of the culture they emerge from. They are the black mirror. In a society obsessed with power, control, and performance. Isn't the psychopath just the perfect citizen? No guilt, no hesitation, efficient, unemotional, highly adaptable. You call him a CEO, a politician, a commander, and you reward him until he destroys what you built. Likewise, the sociopath, born from neglect, is the child of a system that abandons its weak, a system that punishes emotion, shames vulnerability, worships strength without heart. So these aren't just bad people. They're symptoms of a sick society. And until that society heals, the shadows will keep breeding. Jung also warned about the spiritual danger of moral superiority, because the moment you say, I could never be like that, you lose the battle with your own shadow. The truth? Under the right conditions, anyone can become dangerous. Give a man enough power, take away his accountability, isolate him from consequence. You don't just awaken his shadow, you hand it the throne. This is why Jung believed the only cure is integration. But psychopaths cannot integrate what they do not feel. And sociopaths struggle to integrate what they've never seen modeled. So the burden falls on you. You must become aware of what you project. Because often we meet people who seem dark or toxic, and we call them evil. We blame them. We fear them. But what if they're not just showing you who they are, but who you might become if you don't face your inner fragmentation? Jung's individuation process wasn't just a therapy. It was a spiritual initiation, a journey into the underworld of the psyche, where every monster is a message, and every mask you see in others is a part of you waiting to be unmasked. Let's take this further. What if the sociopath is the raw shadow, unfiltered emotion, rage, impulsivity? And the psychopath is the refined shadow, cool, strategic, spiritually numb? Now ask yourself, which one is more dangerous? The one who lashes out, or the one who smiles as he manipulates you to destroy yourself? One is chaotic, the other is surgical. But both represent what Jung called the disowned archetypes. They are not outside us. They are inside. And if we don't do the work to make peace with them, they'll control us without us even knowing it. That's the real danger. Not that the psychopath exists, but that we've built a world where he thrives. Not that the sociopath is violent, but that we've stopped noticing who made him that way. And most of all, that we still believe we're safe from either one. Carl Jung didn't give us a map to avoid the darkness. He gave us a mirror. And he said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because to accept yourself means to accept the killer you could have become, the liar, the manipulator, the one who smiles and destroys, and to choose something higher every day. That is the only way forward, not by judging them, but by refusing to become them. You've seen their faces. You just didn't know what they were. The neighbor who watches you a little too closely. The boss who smiles while taking everything from you. The politician who promises light but speaks from the dark. The lover who made you feel special until they shattered your soul. This isn't fiction. This is reality. And it's not rare, because psychopaths and sociopaths don't walk around with warning signs. They walk around perfectly masked. But Carl Jung warned us that when the shadow is ignored in culture, it doesn't go away. It evolves, it spreads, and worst of all, it becomes desirable. Let's look at history. What do you call a man who manipulates an entire nation with charm, vision, and absolute confidence, yet harbors no empathy for the millions he harms? You call him a dictator. You call him a hero until you realize he's a monster. Adolf Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, Idi Amin, each a master of control, charisma, and cruelty. And here's the most terrifying part. People followed them, loved them, worshipped them, because when a society is broken, afraid, and desperate, the psychopath offers something seductive: certainty. He tells you who the enemy is. He promises strength without conscience. He mirrors your fear and gives it a purpose. Jung saw this happen in Germany. He saw it in the rise of fascism. And he said something most psychologists wouldn't dare to. The greatest danger to humanity is not hatred. It's unconsciousness. Because the unconscious masses will always be drawn to those who appear powerful and emotionless. Why? Because we think they're immune, unshakable, safe. But in truth, they're hollow, and they pull us into their hollow with them. Now let's bring it closer to home. How many CEOs, influencers, or leaders have risen to fame, only to later be exposed as exploitative, manipulative, or abusive? These aren't mistakes. They're patterns. In fact, research shows that corporate psychopathy is not uncommon. Psychopaths are often overrepresented in leadership roles. Why? Because they can charm without guilt. They can make hard decisions without emotional disturbance. They manipulate. They dominate. They win. And society rewards them. We call it hustle. We call it grind. We call it leadership. But Jung would call it something else, a collective possession by the shadow. When your society starts worshiping traits like control, dominance, and emotional detachment, don't be surprised when the psychopath becomes your role model. And then there's the sociopath. He doesn't rise to the top. He lashes out from below. He's the gang leader, the street criminal, the emotionally explosive friend you can't trust. He's the one who feels everything, but can't control any of it. And he's also a product of us. Jung believed every sociopath is a symbol of the rejected child, the parts of our culture we ignore: poverty, abuse, abandonment, emotional illiteracy. When a child grows up without love, he grows up with rage, and society punishes him for acting on what it taught him to be. We call him dangerous, but we forget we made him. Here's the brutal irony. The psychopath walks free, thrives, becomes rich, untouchable. The sociopath gets locked away, blamed, beaten, forgotten. But both are symptoms of the same wound, a world that has forgotten how to feel. And if we're not careful, that world becomes us. Let's make it even more personal. Have you ever met someone who drained you completely, but made you believe it was your fault? Have you ever been manipulated so gently that you thought it was love? Have you ever questioned your own sanity because someone refused to take responsibility, ever? That's shadow. That's what happens when people live fully in the unconscious, when they become the projection, not the person. And you might not realize it until it's too late, because both the psychopath and sociopath don't always attack physically. Sometimes they just plant doubt. They twist truth. They isolate you slowly. And they smile while doing it. Jung saw this not just as evil, but as possession. He didn't mean literal demons. He meant psychic possession by unconscious archetypes. The moment you stop being self-aware, you become the thing you deny. You don't need to be a killer to destroy someone. You just need to be unaware of your own shadow and willing to let someone else's take control of your life. So, what's the consequence of living in a world where shadow dominates? Relationships become transactional. Empathy becomes weakness. Authenticity becomes a liability. You stop asking, "Is this right?" and start asking, "Does this work for me?" And one day, you wake up and realize you've become one of them. Not a full-blown psychopath, not a violent sociopath, but something far more common. Emotionally numb, strategically selfish, disconnected. This is how society collapses, not in flames, but in emotional erosion. And Jung warned us, we no longer live life. We consume it. We perform it. We escape it. And those who feel nothing, they rise, they lead, they win, until everything around them dies. You've been told to fear the psychopath, to avoid the sociopath, to cut out toxic people, to protect your peace. But what if the final lesson isn't about fear at all? What if the people who broke you, the ones who lied to your face with a smile, the ones who used your empathy like a weapon, the ones who drained your soul and left you doubting your own worth? What if they were never here to destroy you? What if they were here to reveal you? Carl Jung didn't believe life was random. He believed it was mythic. Every relationship, every betrayal, every heartbreak was part of the great unfolding, a path to individuation, to wholeness, to your truest self. And the shadow? It's not just a danger, it's the initiation. Think about it. What if the psychopath, cold, calculating, empty, wasn't just evil, but a test, a living riddle that asks, can you love yourself enough not to need someone who feels nothing? And what if the sociopath, explosive, unstable, wounded, was a mirror, a reflection of the chaos you've spent your life suppressing? They aren't just enemies. They are symbols, and symbols are how the soul speaks. Here's the paradox. The people who hurt you the most are often the ones who wake you up, not because they earned, not because they were right, but because they pulled you so far from yourself that you were forced to either break or rebuild. And if you're still here, you chose to rebuild. That's the real power. Not revenge, not emotional control, but self-return. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light. but by making the darkness conscious. This is not a metaphor. It's a commandment. Because enlightenment isn't bliss. It's brutal clarity. It's staring into the mirror, seeing the predator inside you, and choosing not to feed it. It's feeling the rage and choosing the boundary instead of the blade. It's recognizing your own manipulative instincts and refusing to use them, even when it would be easier. This is the final test. Not how much light you hold, but how well you dance with your darkness without becoming it. Let's return to where we began. The world is filled with people who don't feel, people who exploit, who charm, who use. And some of them are thriving. They will never apologize. They will never awaken. They will never be healed. So what do? You stop waiting for them to change, and you start becoming the kind of person they can never control. Because once you become whole, once you reclaim every disowned part of you, the game changes. You no longer attract the abuser, because you no longer tolerate their language. You no longer fear the manipulator, because your truth is not up for negotiation. You no longer chase love, because you've stopped abandoning yourself to earn it. This is what freedom looks like. Stillness in the presence of chaos. Power in the face of control. Compassion without surrender. Carl Jung's greatest teaching wasn't about diagnosis. It was about integration. And the ultimate realization is this: you are not here to be perfect. You are not here to be untouched by darkness. You are here to become someone who can hold the dark without collapsing. That's the real healing. Not light without shadow, but light that shines because of shadow. Because a soul that's never been shattered can never know what it means to be whole. So now I'll leave you with one final truth. You don't need to be afraid of the psychopath. You don't need to fix the sociopath. And you definitely don't need to hide from your own darkness. You just need to own it. And when you do, you'll realize the people who hurt you were never your curse. They were your invitation to wake up, to step into power, to become something no shadow can touch. Comment below, "I walk with my shadow now." Let's see how many souls are brave enough to own what they used to run from. And if this video helped you confront something real, don't forget to like, subscribe, drop your thoughts in the comments, and consider supporting the channel with a super thanks. Your support helps keep these deep, unfiltered truths alive.